Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, where we explore fascinating curiosities and deep lore from the Lord of the Rings universe. Today's video will take the form of a documentary-style analysis, guiding you through some of the darkest and most unsettling beings ever to appear in Tolkien's Legendarium. In this episode, we will gently open the door to a world of ancient powers, beings older, darker, and far more terrifying than most fans ever imagine. From the primordial evil of Morgoth, to the insatiable hunger of Ungoliant, to the tragic fates shaped by beings like Glaurung and the Nazgul, we will uncover how deep Tolkien's vision of darkness truly runs. So get comfortable, prepare your curiosity, and let's descend into the shadows of Arda together. Before Sauron ever rose to power, the shadow that defined Middle-earth began with Morgoth, once known as Melkor, the most powerful of the Ainur. In the earliest days of creation, Melkor longed not for harmony but for dominance, seeking to bend the music of Iluvatar to his own will. That desire for control, even in the shaping of reality itself, marked the beginning of a corruption far deeper than anything Sauron would later achieve. Morgoth did not simply wish to rule Middle-earth. He wished to unmake it, to twist every living thing into a reflection of his own discord. His influence seeped into the very foundations of Arda. He tortured elves to create the first orcs, twisting innocent beings into nightmares. He corrupted Maiar into Balrogs, turning spirits of fire into demons of terror. Dragons, monstrous creatures bred for destruction, were unleashed under his command. Even the two trees of Valinor fell to his malice, their light extinguished, and the world plunged into an age of darkness. Compared to Sauron, Morgoth was not merely a lieutenant of evil, he was its original source. During the First Age, Sauron acted only as a servant, carrying out the designs of a master whose ambition sought to unravel creation itself. If evil were imagined as a great tree, then Morgoth would be its roots, ancient, sprawling, and feeding corruption into every branch that followed. Considering the scale of his malice, it becomes clear why later characters still lived in the shadow of his deeds. Entire wars, civilizations, and tragedies can be traced to Morgoth's relentless pursuit of domination and destruction. Even after his defeat, the scar of his influence remained burned into the world. Many fans underestimate just how vast his reach was, and reflecting on that raises an interesting question. If Sauron terrified Middle-earth, what does it truly mean that he once served someone far worse? Let me know in the comments what you think of Morgoth's role in shaping the darkness of Tolkien's world, and whether you believe any being ever surpassed him in sheer malevolence. If Morgoth embodied the roots of evil, then Ungoliant was the abyss beneath them. A being so ancient and unsettling that even Morgoth himself feared her. Her origins remain shrouded in mystery. Some traditions claim she was a Maya, who twisted herself through her own insatiable hunger, while others whisper that she emerged from the primordial darkness beyond the world, a place untouched by the light of Iluvatar. Whatever the truth may be, Ungoliant's presence in the Legendarium represents a force that defies simple explanation. Hunger made manifest, a void given shape. Her most infamous moment came when she allied with Morgoth, a temporary partnership that neither expected to survive. Together they struck at the heart of Valinor. Morgoth shattered the two trees with his dark spear, and Ungoliant drank their light, draining their sap until the sacred sources of illumination were reduced to withered husks. As she consumed their radiance, she grew immense, monstrous, swollen with shadow, and terrifying even to her powerful companion. After this dreadful act, Ungoliant's appetite only deepened. She demanded the Silmarils from Morgoth, driven by a craving that nothing could satisfy. When he refused, she wrapped him in webs of absolute darkness, choking him until he cried out in terror. It was only through the intervention of his Balrogs that Morgoth escaped, becoming her next meal, a moment that reveals just how fearsome she truly was. Ungoliant embodies a kind of evil distinct from the calculated malice of Sauron or the destructive will of Morgoth. Hers is nihilistic, consuming, the desire to devour until nothing remains. Tolkien leaves her fate uncertain, suggesting she fled into forgotten corners of the world, perhaps lurking in some fathomless void where even darkness trembles. Considering her legacy, including the monstrous lineage that would eventually produce Shelob, Ungoliant remains one of the most disturbing beings ever to haunt Arda. Let me know in the comments whether you think Ungoliant stands as the single most terrifying creature in Tolkien's world, and what you believe became of her after she vanished from history. If Ungoliant represented hunger and shadow, then Gothmog embodied fire and death, the brutal force of Morgoth's wrath made flesh. As the Lord of Balrogs, Gothmog stood among the most feared beings of the First Age. Like Sauron, he was originally a Maya, but his spirit had been twisted into something fierce and unrecognizable, a creature of flame and terror whose very presence signaled destruction. Where Sauron relied on manipulation and strategy, Gothmog existed for domination through sheer force, a weapon unleashed upon the world with devastating results. Gothmog's brutal legacy began with the fall of Feanor, the mightiest of the Noldor. In battle, Feanor fought with unmatched ferocity, yet even he could not withstand the full power of the Balrog Lord. Gothmog struck him down, extinguishing one of the greatest lights among the elves. Later, during the Dagor Bragollach and the Nirnaeth Arnudiad, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, he led Morgoth's armies with deadly precision. Yet one of his darkest moments came during the fall of Gondolin, when he guided Balrogs and monstrous creatures into the hidden city. Streets once filled with song and beauty were turned to ruins under his command. In that chaos he faced Ecthelion, the noble elf lord. Their clash ended with both their deaths, Gothmog drowning in the Fountain of the King, as Ecthelion used the last of his strength to defeat him. Even in death, Gothmog's shadow lingered, for the devastation he wrought reshaped the fate of entire realms. Unlike Sauron's subtlety, Gothmog's nature was raw and overwhelming. He did not deceive, he destroyed. His name alone could break courage, a reminder that not all evil in Middle-earth came masked in intellect or charm. Some came roaring, blazing, and unstoppable. Do you think Gothmog stands among the most frightening beings in Tolkien's Legendarium? Share your thoughts below. His presence certainly suggests that power without restraint can be just as terrifying as any dark sorcery. Though Gothmog embodied raw devastation, Sauron represented a different, chilling form of evil, one built on order, calculation, and the belief that domination could bring peace. Long before he became the Dark Lord of the Third Age, Sauron was a Maya of Aule, drawn to structure and control. That desire eventually led him to join Morgoth, not out of fear but admiration for a power that promised to reshape the world according to a single, commanding will. After Morgoth's defeat, Sauron rose to claim the mantle of the next great tyrant of Middle-earth. Unlike his former master, he did not wish to annihilate everything. He wanted to rule it. He envisioned a world molded under his design, and he pursued this goal with terrifying precision. His strategy was not brute force like Gothmog's, but manipulation, deceit, and the slow construction of systems that ensnared entire peoples. Sauron crafted the 9 rings of power for men, binding their bearers to his will and transforming them into the Nazgul, the ringwraiths. He forged the One Ring itself, a tool designed to dominate the elves, dwarves, and men by controlling their own rings of power. Through centuries of war and subtle influence, he reduced Numenor to ruin, orchestrating its downfall by corrupting its kings with promises of greatness and immortality. His victories were rarely loud at first. They began as whispers, temptations, and carefully placed lies that grew into catastrophe. Yet what makes Sauron particularly unsettling is the cold logic behind his malevolence. He did not revel in chaos for its own sake. He believed that only through absolute rule could the world achieve order. That conviction, paradoxically rational, makes his evil distinct from the wild hunger of Ungoliant or the consuming hatred of Morgoth. By the time of the Lord of the Rings, Sauron had become a symbol of fear itself, a distant, watchful presence whose influence shaped the destinies of nations. His shadow fell across Middle-earth not with fire alone, but with the weight of inevitability. Share your thoughts. Is Sauron's calculated approach to evil more frightening than Morgoth's raw destruction? Once Sauron forged the 9 rings of power, their bearers, once proud kings of men, slowly faded into something far more terrifying, the Nazgul, the ringwraiths. These spectral servants embodied the price of accepting Sauron's gifts, a fate sealed not through force but through desire. Each king chose power, wealth, or influence, believing the rings would strengthen their rule. Instead, their identities dissolved until nothing remained but obedience to the Dark Lord. By the time of the Lord of the Rings, they had lost their humanity entirely, existing only as instruments of fear and death. Their leader, the Witch King of Angmar, stands as one of the most infamous figures Sauron ever commanded. For centuries, he terrorized the northern kingdom of Arnor, orchestrating its downfall through relentless wars and carefully planned traps. His power lay not only in physical might, but in psychological warfare, breaking the spirits of his enemies long before their armies fell. His rule over Angmar turned the region into a nightmare realm, a place where dread lingered long after he departed. What makes the Nazgul especially unsettling is that they were not deceived innocents. They accepted the rings willingly, drawn by ambition. Their transformation was slow, inevitable, and ultimately complete, turning them into shadows that walked between life and death. They became eternal slaves, unable to choose anything but Sauron's will. Their presence in Middle-earth carried a chill beyond simple menace. Wherever they rode, silence followed, a suffocating aura that drained hope from all who encountered them. The Black Breath, their paralyzing aura of despair, could shatter even a strong mind. And because they could not be killed by ordinary means, their pursuit felt relentless, almost inevitable. The Nazgul stand as a stark reminder of one of Tolkien's central themes. Evil often begins with temptation. Their story warns that the hunger for power can consume even the greatest kings, leaving behind only a hollow echo of what once was. Do you think the Nazgul represent the most tragic fall among the servants of Sauron? Share your thoughts. Their origin is one of the darkest tales in Middle-earth. Before Smaug ever terrorized the peoples of Middle-earth, there was Glaurung, the father of dragons, a creature crafted by Morgoth in the deep pits of Angband. Unlike the later winged dragons, Glaurung first appeared without wings, but his lack of flight did nothing to diminish his power. His true strength came not only from fire and destruction, but from his mind. He possessed a cruel intelligence that allowed him to twist the thoughts of others, weaving lies that could shatter lives and destinies. Glaurung became one of Morgoth's most devastating weapons in the First Age. His manipulation extended far beyond the battlefield. He used deceit as skillfully as flame, turning victories into long-lasting tragedies. One of the most haunting stories tied to him is that of Turin and Ninor, siblings whose fates were bound by Glaurung's malice. Through calculated deception, he clouded their memories, leading them into despair and ultimately into one of the most tragic endings in Tolkien's entire Legendarium. His destructive force was no less terrible. Glaurung brought Nargothrond to its knees, not merely with fire but with psychological warfare. He taunted the defenders, shattered their morale, and ensured their downfall through cunning as much as strength. Even as a creature of flame, his voice was his most dangerous weapon. Those who met his gaze or listened too long found themselves lost in illusions crafted solely to torment them. Where Smaug was proud and greedy, Glaurung was calculated and methodical. His cruelty had purpose. He didn't simply destroy cities. He destroyed hope. His arrogance was matched only by the precision of his malice. And as the first of his kind, he established the model for dragon dread that would echo through later ages of Middle-earth. Do you think Glaurung ranks among the most terrifying creations of Morgoth? His blend of physical power and psychological torment makes him a uniquely chilling force in Tolkien's world. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. He had once been a man of Numenorean descent, but whatever name he carried in life was long forgotten. In time, he became known only as the Mouth of Sauron, a title that replaced his identity completely. His transformation was not physical like that of the Nazgul, but spiritual, a descent so deep into cruelty and servitude that his very soul seemed hollowed out. While he was neither a warrior nor a sorcerer in the traditional sense, he was something far more unsettling, a voice sharpened into a weapon. At the Black Gate, the Mouth of Sauron displayed a chilling mastery of psychological warfare. He delighted in breaking hope, speaking with a confidence that suggested he believed victory was already assured. Every word from his mouth carried venom, crafted to wound the morale of the free peoples. His mockery, his threats, and the cold satisfaction in his tone revealed how thoroughly he had surrendered his will to Sauron. Unlike Saruman, who fell through pride and ambition, The mouth of Sauron embraced darkness willingly. His loyalty was not the result of corruption, it was devotion. "My master, Sauron the Great, bids thee welcome," he declared with sinister amusement, embodying the arrogance of one who saw himself as an extension of his lord's power. He did not hide behind enchantment or shadow. He confronted his enemies directly, wielding words as cruelly as any blade. In many ways, he represented the ultimate fate of those who served evil not out of fear, but out of conviction. The mouth of Sauron stands as a reminder that darkness does not always require monstrous forms. Sometimes, it manifests through those who abandon empathy and identity in pursuit of authority under a tyrant. His existence forces a troubling question. What is more frightening, a creature born of shadow, or a man who chooses to become its faithful herald? Share your thoughts below. Does the mouth of Sauron deserve a place among the most disturbing servants of the Dark Lord? There are still other beings, lesser known but no less disturbing, who revealed just how deep the darkness of Arda once reached. One of them was Thuringwethil, the vampire servant of Sauron during the First Age. She flew through the night as a monstrous messenger, carrying dark communications between her master and Morgoth's forces. Though her role in the wider Legendarium was small, her very existence hinted at horrors that prowled the shadows long before the Third Age. Maya twisted into a vampiric creature, she embodied corruption given wings. Then there were the servants of Tolkien, the dreadful isle ruled by Sauron during the same age. There, elves and men were imprisoned, tortured, and in some cases transformed into monstrous wolf-like spirits bound to Sauron's will. These were not ordinary beasts. They were corrupted entities, spiritual beings forced into flesh to serve as hunters, guards, and instruments of terror. Their presence haunted the kings of Beleriand, who feared even to speak of the horrors rumored to dwell there. Evil in Middle-earth did not always appear in the form of grand villains. Sometimes it came from men. The Black Númenóreans, descendants of those who had turned to darkness after the fall of Númenor, were among the most fanatical servants of Sauron. They practiced dark sorcery, performed human sacrifices, and ruled with brutality over the coastal regions in his name. Their lust for immortality and power led an entire culture into corruption, proving that the hearts of men could fall just as deeply as any creature shaped by Morgoth. Finally, there were the Easterlings, tribes of men who joined Morgoth and later Sauron. Not all of them were inherently wicked, many were deceived or desperate, but the darkest among them became tyrants and torturers, enforcing the will of the Dark Lords with frightening devotion. Tolkien's world makes one thing clear: evil does not rest solely in ancient monsters. It grows in fear, desire, and the choices individuals make. Which of these lesser-known evils do you find the most chilling? So who was truly the most evil being in Tolkien's vast legendarium? Sauron may be the iconic villain, but even he stood in the shadow of his master. Morgoth was the origin of nearly all suffering in Middle-earth, the fountain from which corruption flowed. His malice shaped the world itself, scarring Arda in ways that endured long after his defeat. And yet, he feared Ungoliant, whose alien hunger defied comprehension. She consumed light, devoured creation, and even Morgoth trembled before her boundless appetite. The Nazgul, once kings of men, surrendered their souls for power, becoming eternal servants bound to Sauron's will. Their fall stands as one of the darkest tragedies, a reminder that evil often begins with choice rather than force. The dragons and vampiric servants of the First Age, beings like Glaurung and Thuringwethil, unleashed terror that few in later ages could imagine. And behind them all, the willingness of men to embrace darkness, whether in the form of the Black Númenóreans or the most fanatical of the Easterlings, revealed that corruption was not limited to monsters. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is this: evil in Tolkien's world does not always roar or blaze. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it offers gifts, rings, thrones, promises of immortality, and waits for the heart to falter. Morgoth and Sauron may be towering symbols of darkness, but the legends remind us that ordinary choices can lead to extraordinary ruin. As we've explored in this journey through the darkest corners of Arda, the faces of evil are many. Some are monstrous, others tragically human, and each reveals a different facet of the constant struggle between hope and despair that defines Tolkien's world. Thank you for joining this deep dive into the shadows of Middle-earth. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more documentary-style analyses of Tolkien's rich and mysterious universe.